Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB!
Yes.
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us. Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Tuesday. It's January 9, rainy day on this winter day, but that's okay. Night after the National Football Championship, Indiana basketball coming up tonight. The draft picks are all set, and plenty more to get to. Mike DeCourcy on the program today from the Big Ten Network, as well as the Sporting News. Chronic Hoosier will join us as well. We will try to get some sound from the national championship game, as well as Michigan. We are the champions, and they can play it loudly and I would say proudly, but they'll be proud, I'm sure. But yeah, Michigan, they're your winners. What do you think? They were pretty damn dominant in that game last night, and it was not a great night for Michael Penix, but that is largely on the part of Michigan's defense that just made life difficult, and they didn't have their running game, but they'll make no excuses. Michigan was just solid. Washington could not get out of the way or stop that running game of Michigan's early on. Boy, they jump out to that early lead, just kind of running everywhere until they settled down, and then it was a ball game. But almost like last time when they fumbled the punt against Texas, Michael Penix throws a pick. First play into the second half, it would only yield a field goal for the Wolverines, but it was enough to kind of stymie their momentum that they had garnered, and it kind of just changed things a little bit, I think. But Michigan definitely was the stronger team, whether we like them or you like them or not. Man, they were dominant. That defense was pretty damn good, and it is what it is. But welcome aboard. Appreciate having everybody along for the ride here at the Andy Moore Honda, whether you're on the Andy Moore Honda hotline or however you're following us on radio on 97.7 The Ref, ESPN, always the right call down on the river in Evansville. Or, of course, our friends up in the region, the voice of the region, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, WJOB, and the only sports station in Fort Wayne, Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. Make sure you stay tuned each day here as you can get Caleb and Kenny in the morning and the Sports Rush right after Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Looking forward to that as well. Looking forward to talking to Mike today. Hello to everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline, Las Vegas. Larry, Fred, Brian, Kevin, Robert, Fozon. On from Amon Jordan. And Penix was just getting kind of beat up last night, man. They started to really get to him. And it makes you wonder, could he have lasted a Big Ten season? It's a different style of play. Playing against teams like Iowa and Penn State, Michigan, which were much more deep. This is going to be next year when the new members of the Big Ten meet the existing Big Ten. It's going to be a clash of styles. But, the old adage, defense wins championships. And I think you saw that last night, in addition to a hell of a running game. But they just didn't make mistakes, Michigan. And they ran the ball all over the place, but didn't go the way a lot of people would like for it to have gone, but it is the way it is. And to the victors go the spoil. I think that Jim Harbaugh will now ride off into the sunset to San Diego, but we shall see. That is simply a guess on my part. He brings the national championship back to Ann Arbor for the first time in eons. And I believe only their third national title. Is that correct? A little surprising.
That is true. And it's their first outright title since 1948.
48. I knew it was way, way, way back. But even their first title since, like 1990 or something.
It's the one that they shared with Nebraska, correct?
Yeah, and maybe even
I think it's 97. I think it's 1997.
But it's been a minute. But it also gets the Big Ten off the schneid, another national championship in football in the all-important era of bragging rights between SEC and Big Ten. The Big Ten gets a national championship. Not only that, the two teams that were playing for the title, in essence, now Big Ten teams. As the next time you see the University of Washington on the football field, they will be playing under the banner of the Big Ten Conference. So there's that. I felt bad for Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix and the guys, but hell of a run. I mean, just think 3-4 years ago, he's at Indiana, and little did you know that 4 years later, he was going to be a Heisman Trophy runner-up playing for a national championship game. And congratulations to him. And not sure if you noticed or knew about all the Indiana ties that were in that game. And I might miss some, but of course you have Kalen DeBoer, you have Michael Penix on Washington, you have Nick Sheridan, the tight ends coach, you have William Inge, defensive coach. So let's see. Then you go over to the Michigan side. Mike Hart was at Indiana back then. Jack Tuttle was at Indiana back then. I don't think that AJ Barner, or was he on the squad then? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But
pretty sure AJ Barner was on one of Indiana's bad teams, if I to put it bluntly. He wasn't on one of the teams with success.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was around in 19 or 20. But a lot of connections. A lot of Indiana connections there in that national championship game. And it's kind of wild. That's how it is, though. How's everybody doing? Robbie, how are you, sir? We appreciate you. Sam, Mike, Wabash County, Indiana. Hope things are well up there and dry. Sam says Penix looked like he was playing hurt all night. Didn't help that his receivers dropped balls. There ain't no lie about that. There were some drop passes, man. Passes that normally do not get dropped.
And not to mention, I feel like Penix threw a lot of balls over the heads of receivers.
He missed some receivers. He
missed a lot of open receivers.
He missed a touchdown on the very first drive. I believe it was Odunze, but I can't remember, someone that was going across the middle of the end zone, and he had him wide open and just missed him. Then there was two other big-time throws that were just off, wide open guys too.
And then one big momentum killer that wasn't necessarily their fault, but the holding call that would have resulted in a 30-yard pickup.
Boy, man.
That was when the game was still within reach for Washington.
Yes, and I don't like talking about officiating because had said it was an ACC crew that they said that their job was they wanted to not be a part of the game, which means, they don't want to make calls unless they absolutely have to. Well, I'm like, okay, there was they finally call a hold, and they call it on Washington on a big play. Yet prior to that series, when Michigan was running the ball, I'm watching and I'm like, holy crap! No wonder you got big holes on getting to the outside. I forget who the running back was, but there was one particular play where, if you're watching, listening on radio, obviously you can't see this. I'm holding it up for our YouTube audience, but there's just a play that springs a guy to a nice run for Michigan. Meanwhile, the tackle of Washington is trying to make his move towards the runner. His jersey is stretched halfway off of his neck. And I'm like, when you're inside, I get that. There's holding all the time, and it's hard to catch all of those. But this is the quote-unquote block that sprung the run. It sealed the edge. It opened the gap, the C gap, off the left tackle. Boom. Well, the reason that hole was so large is because the tackle couldn't move because the guy had it wrapped around his collar wrapped around his throat. Stretched out about 1.5 feet. I don't know how you missed that. And there were several. Then I saw several other people post different pictures of different plays. One was Roma Dunze's jersey just being pulled. There was another block, completely different. It was going on all the time. And that helps when you're getting that kind of help. But hey, it is what it is. And so there's that. We'll talk more about that, of course, with Mike DeCourcy when he comes on. Last night, the Pacers, oh boy, a little bit of a scare with Tyrese Halliburton. He's going for an MRI today. I believe that he is, well, I shouldn't say anything because I don't know. That's why he's going for an MRI. But it's a hamstring strain. That's what it's initially being called. He was carried off of the court, which a little over the top, I think. But he left Monday night's big win the Pacers get over the Celtics, even with all that. A 133-131 win over the Celtics. And Halliburton left in the second quarter due to that hamstring strain, and he'll undergo an MRI today, according to Rick Carlisle. He was driving to the goal when he stopped on a dime and slipped, causing him to do the splits. He immediately grabbed at his left thigh and rolled over in pain before teammates helped carry him back to the locker room. But Indiana ruled him out for the rest of the game. He only had 7 points and 6 assists in 13 minutes of action prior to that. I'm just kidding. That's very efficient. But they need to get him back toot sweet, averaging over 24 points a game and a league high 12.7 assists across all 32 games this season. So they need to get him back as quickly as possible. That could be not good. Draymond Green said that the ghost NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, talked him out of retirement. Why a commissioner? That's odd, but
break.
But oh well. Hey, we got lots more to get to. Mike DeCourcy joining us next. We've got the national championship to talk about, tonight's basketball action to talk about, plenty more. Back with it all here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. The cheaters win. Yeah, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Speaking of cheaters, there were some people for on the Louisville side of things yesterday for basketball when we were talking about coaches that could potentially replace Kenny Payne. Apparently there's I believe it's a fairly small contingent that wants Will Wade to be their next coach.
Why not?
I guess why not? There's plenty of other non-cheating options there, though. And another thing too,
I agree.
When they mentioned Dusty May, one thing that they worry about, they're like, they know that's Indiana's first call the moment Mike Woodson's no longer their head coach, whether it be fired or he retires, whichever one were to come first.
I don't know that that's true.
You don't think he'd be their first call? I mean, maybe not, but he'd be one of the calls for sure.
Yeah, definitely get absolutely. But whoever's saying Dusty May for Louisville is just dreaming.
I think realistically,
why would he ever leave Boca Raton, Florida, to go to that mess?
That's a great
talking
question.
about Dusty May potentially ever potentially going to Louisville. I'm like, he is never going to leave Boca Raton to go to that mess.
The other show that I do, Mike, is Louisville show in the afternoons, and obviously they're doing a lot of talking about coaches for obvious reasons. And Dusty May came up a bit yesterday, but the argument people say is that if, let's say, he were at Louisville, if he had any sort of success, and down the line Mike Woodson's no longer Indiana's head coach, whether it be retirement or something else, I mean, it's probably one of Indiana's first calls, Dusty May. And I don't think Louisville wants to have somebody like that. I wouldn't think.
I don't think that's a worry for them.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, it would depend on the kind of position Indiana was in when Mike decided to retire. I mean, how strong is it? All that sort of stuff. But,
yeah.
Because you don't go rebuild Louisville and then go start over at Indiana. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Circumstance is a big factor.
Yeah, you don't want to push the rock up the mountain twice in a row. Once you get it up there, you'd like to enjoy it a little bit.
All right, here we go, guys.
Unless you're, what's his name? Larry Brown.
Oh, yeah. You can't
Larry
judge
Brown
anything by Larry, man.
He was a glutton for punishment, man.
You can't judge anything by Larry.
Here we
He's
go.
a different dude.
Store, butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, January 9th, a rainy day. But into each life, a little rain must fall. But we've got the sunshine for you, Mike DeCourcy.
Good morning, Jim.
Gotta love those segues, baby. That's all. That's just all talent, Mike. That's just all talent. Is all that is. Oh man. Of course, last night the college football national title game, Michigan and future. I guess you might as well say now current Big Ten member Washington, as their season has come to a close. So the next time you see them, they're a member of the Big Ten. But man, I think Michigan, I don't care what you think about them, not you, but in the proverbial you, think about them, they are what they are, and that's a tough football team, man. They are just good. They're fast, they're big, they're strong. They didn't make mistakes, and they played like a national champion should, and they get to put that big ring on.
Yeah, I was one of the Sporting News writers asked to make a prediction on the game last week, and I knew that Washington was going to have to score a significant number of points to win. Now, if they had won, I don't think they would have needed to score 35. If they had played more proficiently, if they'd been able to play more proficiently, I don't think the final score needed to be 35, 34. I don't think Michigan would have done as well. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
But I knew that they would struggle with that, because I knew that Joe Moore Award and all that stuff, I knew that Michigan would put a pass rush on Penix that he would be challenged by. And that's really, to me, what turned the game. There was also the element of the Michigan offensive line and the seams they created, and or some of the schemes that Washington put themselves in, occasional blitzes into a solid line, and they left huge seams for Michigan running backs. There was one of the, I think it was the second touchdown run by Edwards, that you saw a linebacker go soaring into the line, and you're thinking, what is he doing? Why would you take yourself out of the hole or out of plugging the gap? And the reason was it was a blitz. So I don't know whether it was a run blitz or whether they just misdiagnosed the play, but they got crushed on that. That became a 40-yard touchdown run. And those kinds of plays, you can't give up a play like that in a championship game. You long pass, but you give up 40-yard touchdown runs, you're not winning the game.
No, and while there were some, the officials wanted to stay out of the game, and they did a pretty good job of that. And certain times I'm like, well, you call that, but you don't call half these other times. Michigan's got a collar wrapped around a guy's throat, but I'm not, even if they hadn't have done that, because that stuff goes on all the time. Man, they just looked dominant at the line of scrimmage, and Michael Penix just could not get into a rhythm. His passes were just off. He missed a touchdown on the responding opening drive. He had a touchdown and just missed him. And then there were a couple other wide open passes that he just missed.
He didn't have time. I mean, that's the part that
that's on Michigan.
I think Kirk Herbstreit is phenomenal, but I don't think he gave enough credit to Michigan's pressure in those situations. Why did he miss this receiver? Because he found somebody open for a change before he had somebody in his throat. And so he had to so if he felt that he had to get that pass out there and try to get a completion. Okay, that guy down there, that's his second read. That wasn't read number one. Read number one is open. How many times did he get a chance to throw that ball without having to deal with a rush and get his first read? So I'm not blaming him for missing the second read being wide open, because he didn't have to get there. And that was so rare that he was going to throw it. So I don't blame him for that. I don't think that he often had even his first read as an option, not because of the coverage in the back, but because he was getting so much heat in so many circumstances.
Yeah, and it's the first time that he's really been pressured like that this year. But of course, he hadn't played a defense like Michigan all year. And, the old adage, defense wins championships. And there's a reason they say that. It's not just made up. It's true, because, man, when you can't get anything accomplished, and their running game was compromised a little bit with their running back not being up to speed. But at the end of the day, they took away the weapons that had and there was a lot of balls that were dropped that shouldn't have been dropped by Washington.
Yes.
Some that doesn't happen normally, and it's like, but you know what? When things happen that don't normally happen, there's generally a reason. If it's more than one thing, and there were multiple passes dropped, there were multiple passes missed. So there's obviously a reason those things are happening, and you have to give that credit to Michigan and their defense. And the offense was just mistake free. I mean, they just didn't make mistakes, man.
One thing I thought about as I watched was, I don't know Washington's running back depth situation, but they were sacrificing yards every time they handed the ball to their primary running back. He just did not have the burst that he ordinarily has, that he had for 95 or 99% of the Alabama game. It just wasn't there. And I kept thinking, there isn't somebody else that you could put into the situation. I know that, that they had gotten such great play, but I just think you're trying to win a championship, that you got to take your best shot. And I felt for a lot of that game, like that Washington wasn't necessarily acknowledging the reality of its circumstance, that its starting running back was not the best option it had. And if it was, then they've got real problems with their offense next time around, because you didn't have the running game at the level that you needed to have it in order to put Penix in situations so that he's not facing full-blown pass rushes, because it's 3rd or 2nd and 3 or something like that. And instead, you were always looking at 2nd and 7 at best, and that just wasn't going to help with the weakness, or I should say weakness, but the disadvantage of your offensive line having to deal with the defensive line and the pressure schemes that Michigan was throwing at them.
Absolutely. And it was certainly but it was still a fun game to watch, especially when it seemed like Washington, they were never out of the game. They were right there until towards the end, and you knew they're like, oh man, when they got down 2 scores again, you're like, ooh, this is going to be tough. And when he threw that pick, I mean, it's kind of a mistake, but at the same time, he also got rolled up on. So I don't know if it was, I don't know what came first, the getting rolled up on, or making
getting rolled up first. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that, and so he forced that pass in there, and that was huge. And that kind of wrapped the game up for him.
Wasn't it 4th and 13? Wasn't that the situation?
Was that the 4th down play? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it was 4th and 13. So, and he was getting heat again, so he just had to get it out there to see what might happen. I don't think that was really decisive. I do find it interesting the way, the simplistic way in which things are viewed. Okay, what the final score was, at 34-13, I think it was. So people act like it was a blowout. And I guess, if you had $1,000 on Washington to cover, it felt like a blowout or something like that. But the game was 20-13 midway through the 4th quarter. It was a highly competitive game. It was a game in which Michigan was obviously the better team, but the better team doesn't always win. If Washington had been able to create one break for itself, we could have had a tie game, and then it would have been up for grabs. So it was a very competitive football game that kept your interest until the final 3 minutes. I don't think you could ask for anything more than that. And to characterize that as a mismatch or a blowout, I think is not only an overstatement, but a misdiagnosis.
I thought it was a good game. I enjoyed it, and right up toward the end. But so now we look forward to these 4 teams joining the Big Ten next year, Washington being one of those 4. And did we see a distinct difference in the style of the teams that are coming in, as opposed to the teams that are here, like Penn State, who had a top-rated defense, Michigan, who had a top-rated defense, and then we look at Oregon and Washington, and these guys throwing the ball all over the yard, completely different styles. So are we going to see a big clash of styles next year?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I think it's hard to say for sure, because with the way college football operates now, if you're out at Washington or Oregon or Southern Cal or UCLA, and you have concerns about whether your style can mesh with what you'll face in the Big Ten, if indeed you do, then you can address that immediately. You can go get a couple of defensive tackles in the portal, and maybe all of a sudden you're not the same style of defense. So I don't know that necessarily it's a significant difference, because all of college football, I mean, maybe this Michigan team was somewhat of an exception, but all of college football has trended toward the passing game as its primary method of operation, and therefore defending the passing game has been the primary concern. Now, certainly Michigan did an elite job in terms of addressing the defense of the passing game, and it started with the pass rush, but it wasn't limited to that. I thought their coverage was very good as well. So I don't know if we'll see a huge difference between the styles. There may be somewhat of a difference with Michigan, but I do think that Michigan's team, the success they've had the last couple of years, it has been different than most of what's out there. They have been less dynamic in the passing game than Georgia, than Ohio State, than Oklahoma or Texas. They've been less dynamic in the passing game and more oriented toward ball control, success on the ground, breaking big plays on the ground. And they haven't been ineffective in the passing game. We've seen them hit long balls that really changed games. Alabama would be a good example of when that happened, but it wasn't a huge emphasis in the way they played. They didn't throw 35 passes a game. So I think that Michigan is different than most of the elite teams as it stands. And so therefore the change in style for the 4 West Coast teams will be more toward Michigan than necessarily the rest of the league.
And then the next question is, do we see Jim Harbaugh in the Big Ten next year, or is he in San Diego?
Well, if he's in San Diego, what's he going to be doing? Sailing a boat? There's nothing in San Diego.
I mean, Chargers. Damn it!
I was just pulling your chain. I do that all the time.
Somebody said it earlier, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They had San Diego with a question mark. I'm like, the Chargers. The other day, I almost went through 3 names for the Raiders. I started to say Oakland, and I started to say Los Angeles. Then I'm like, "Damn it, it's Las Vegas."
Yes. I do that all the time. I was just teasing you. It's interesting. I think that if you leave a program or a team after you've won a championship, you're missing the best part of winning a championship. You get to surf that for years. I mean, you have to really be poor or over your head, as was the case, say, with Ed Orgeron. He just wasn't a great college football coach. And so you have to be, if you are at Jim Harbaugh's level, now you've won 3 Big Ten titles in a row. You've made the playoff. We don't have to worry about whether Jim Harbaugh can keep this going in or around this neighborhood. So why would you walk away from that? What's out there that you haven't? I mean, better weather. Okay, I'll go along with that. I mean, LA's got great weather. That's your one advantage of being the Chargers coach over being the reigning national champion, and not just the reigning national champion, but a former star quarterback who then went back to his school and won a championship at his alma mater. I mean, it's virtually impossible for him to run afoul of the Michigan fan base. I mean, he's given them years of great quarterbacking, and now he's given them years of championship football as a coach. So why would you walk away from that? To wake up to the sun
away from
every
the
day?
NCAA mainly.
Oh, I don't think he's afraid of that. I don't think he's afraid of that at all. And here's why. Because Michigan had his back. If Michigan had reacted differently to either the revelations initially or to the Big Ten punishment, then I would say that, yeah, I'd be looking over my shoulder because my school, my employer doesn't believe in me and doesn't have my back. But it's the exact opposite of that. Michigan totally supported him. They couldn't have been more supportive. And there are lots of people who criticize that. But in this discussion, for the purpose of this discussion, what's important is that they had his back relative to why he would stay. And so I think that it's too pat, it's too easy, and that in the end he will sign a enhanced contract at Michigan and will remain. And coaches, coaches just don't walk away from this opportunity. You work your whole life for this, and you're like, okay, I got it, I'm leaving. No, that doesn't happen in real life.
A lot of Big Ten fans, especially IU fans, were cheering on Washington, but that is now ended. Washington is now the enemy, it appears. After last night's game was completed, they're now a member of the Big Ten. I'm just kidding about that. But, hey, we've got lots more coming up. Basketball tonight, both Purdue, Indiana on the hardwood as they get back at it, both on the road. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network with us right now. Back with more, brought to you by Chop Shop right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
All right.
Oh, well, Purdue should have their tougher game on the road tonight, but I don't think that they're going to have a tougher game than Indiana.
Why do you say Purdue should have a tougher game?
Nebraska is better than Rutgers, but
yes.
Indiana is not as good as Purdue.
That's what I was just going to say. Yes.
So the disparity is greater. Two of these things are not the same.
No.
I mean, Purdue.
I think Indiana has to win tonight, though. I was looking ahead of the schedule. After Minnesota, this game, and then the Minnesotas after that, your next three games, you could very well lose all three of them. Purdue at home, and then Wisconsin on the road, Illinois on the road.
Those are three tough games for Indiana right there.
Oh, man. It is tough. That's I said on BTN Sunday night that if I were a coach, those like porn blockers and that sort of thing you can get on your, I would put a schedule blocker on on all the kids' computers and iPads and iPhones, because you don't want to look ahead, man. It's just never good news.
But if you can get past Rutgers and beat Minnesota at home, then you can afford to lose.
Yeah,
maybe all three of those, but obviously you want to maybe steal one if you can. But obviously the odds are.
It's hard, man. It's just, the league just doesn't give in, and it started out the year. The league as a whole did not play well in the first 3 weeks or so of the season. And a lot of people wanting the Big Ten to come back down to earth made up their minds that it wasn't going to be a good year. And certainly it seemed it was trending that way. But everything after that completely reversed course. The win over Baylor by Michigan State, Purdue beating Arizona here. Even Indiana, to an extent, challenging Kansas in the way they did that Saturday helped. But overall, what people don't realize now, because they don't look at these things, they just remember impressions.
Mm-hmm.
They are the number 2 league in the net rankings. And as a conference, they have by far the second best winning percentage. The best winning percentage as a league is the Big 12, and it's not close to second place. It's like 80 to 75. But from the Big 10, it goes 75 to 74, or 76 to 74 with the SEC, and then no one else is over 72.
Sorry, I got to cut you off, Mike. Here we go.
Oh, sorry.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. It's January 9. Thanks a lot for being with us. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network joins us as tonight a couple of Big Ten behemoths get into action, both on the road, both Indiana teams, Indiana and Purdue on the road. Purdue, number 1 Purdue, will they head to Nebraska to take on Mr. Fred Hoiberg's squad, who has been a little bit of a surprise in the Big Ten this year, not a ton. And Indiana goes to the former RAC. It's no longer the RAC, but who's never going to
RAC though?
Who's not going to call it the RAC? How do you not? And I feel sorry for Jersey Mike's because that's who's paying whatever they're paying.
They get all the RAC. In Jersey Mike's defense, they get all the official recognition on television. We call it Jersey Mike's Arena on Big Ten Network all the time. But the RAC is a heck of a name. And you know what's interesting is they were calling it the RAC even when it was first introduced. Because when I went there in the 80s, it was the Lewis Brown Athletic Center. And everybody that I encountered when I was there called it the RAC. And I'm like, but what? How do you get RAC out of Lewis Brown Athletic Center? So I think there will always be people that call it that.
Oh, absolutely, without question. And tonight is an important game for Indiana for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's an opportunity to catch a Rutgers team who has not been quite as tough as they have been in the last couple years. Indiana has not won in Piscataway since 2018, I believe. And they've lost 8 out of their last 10 matchups. And so this is important. Not only none of that matters because that's just history, but what does matter is going 4-1 as opposed to not picking up a potential road win when you can, because the road wins are going to be tough to come by this year, as always. But this is Indiana is a team that has to take advantage of any and every opportunity to get something like that. And this is one of those opportunities. Not that at Illinois is not an opportunity and all the other places, but obviously those are much more difficult challenges. So tonight is an opportunity for Indiana to pick up a road win like they did at Michigan, which could be the difference between making the tournament and not for this squad.
Absolutely. They showed that they know how to play on the road by going to Michigan and winning. That certainly was not easy. Michigan has talent and certainly wants to have a great year. Rutgers is an interesting team. We had their game on Saturday, I believe it was, against Iowa, and they did not play badly in that game. They really didn't. I mean, they gave up 86 points, so they certainly didn't play to the level that they wanted. But there were moments in that game where they were performing really well, and they certainly owned the boards. What they did not do was they did not run great offense against a team that, this Iowa has never under Fran McCaffrey been known for great defense. They've had some very good defensive teams. Their better teams have been good defensive teams, but it's not really their first strength. Their first strength has always been how well they score. And so Rutgers did a poor job of dealing with what Iowa presented to them defensively. And that's the key for Indiana, I think, is to put Rutgers in an uncomfortable position offensively with their D. And Indiana has the ability to do that. IU can certainly defend at a high level, with especially with Xavier Johnson coming back to give them better defensive action against the ball, with some rim protection. I think Mbako can still develop into a high-level wing defender because of his length and his dynamism. He just needs more experience at it. So I think I think this is a game in which Indiana can make it hard on Rutgers to score. The question is, can Indiana find a consistent flow to their offense in the way that Iowa did? It helped Iowa was playing at home, but if they can score 86 at home, then IU should be able to score 75 on the road, and that 75 might be enough to get there.
Yeah, IU has done some funny things of late. They get out rebounded like an elementary school team playing against a varsity squad when they played Ohio State by 22 rebounds at home. But yet they win that game because they only turned the ball over 1 time in the second half, 4 times in the entire game. Meanwhile, they are able to get 22 points off of 14 Ohio State turnovers, which it was just an odd game. I mean, normally you look at those stats and you're like, oh, wow, and you said, who won this game? I probably would not have said Indiana when you get out rebounded that much at home, but there's a lot of things that goes into it. But obviously they're going to have to clean that up. Indiana had a lot of fast breaks that night, but that also tells me it's because they're not crashing the boards. They're taking off. That was not their game plan going in. And I guess maybe it worked, but I don't think you can just leave that open that often.
I think that's fair. You have to do a better job of rebounding. But if you say to me you're going to get out rebounded by 7 or 8, but you're going to turn over the ball 4 times, I think statistically I might take that deal.
Oh yeah, they got out rebounded by 22 though.
Yeah, well, I know. I'm just sort of trying to. But also, sometimes as well, that can be deceptive. And I'd have to look back at the box, but it can be deceptive because
shooting and all that.
If you're not missing shots, then you're not. Then there are going to be fewer offensive. There are going to be fewer offensive rebounds to get. And if you're allowing the other team to shoot a high percentage but taking the ball away from them, there won't be as many rebounds as well. There are lots of things that go into that. You don't want to make it a steady diet. I don't think that's been a persistent problem for Indiana. I think the most important thing that came out of that game was Xavier Johnson playing as well as he did. Yep. Yeah, I was very skeptical, and I can't say I was critical because I don't know if I said it publicly, but I was skeptical of putting him immediately into the starting lineup in his first game back. And you saw right away how poor he was in that circumstance. I think he turned over the ball 3 times. Maybe 3 of the first 5 or 6 times he touched it practically. And he ended up only playing, I think, around 14 minutes, and they take the L. But I on Sunday or Saturday, after he played so well on the weekend, I did say on BTN that maybe he needed to have the game where he came in immediately and played badly in order to have the game that he had this weekend, because he was terrific. I mean, didn't turn it over, hit a couple of big shots, guarded the opposition really well, and added a bite to their defense that hadn't been there in a long time. I mean, look at the numbers that Bruce Thornton put up there on the weekend. Look at the numbers. Thornton had one of his poorest games of the year, and that's not all Xavier, but it's a big part. He's your guy. He's the guy you're assigned to. And if you want to talk about when he got switched, if he got switched onto Roddy Gale's numbers were just as meager as Bruce Thornton's in that game. So, I think Saturday night that Indiana did most of what it needed to do to be happy about the performance. The rebound numbers, okay, but you're holding Ohio State's guards to what? 7 of 32 or something like that. I mean, those are good players that you just completely shut down. And Xavier had a big hand in that.
His speed was so obvious, whether it was bringing the ball up the floor. There were just so many times I'm like, oh, wow, he would just hit another gear. And there was not a faster player on the floor on either side. He was just his speed is so fast, and I was surprised to see him back at I hate to call him 100% because that's not for me to say, but right. He sure looked like he was 100% when he was bringing the ball up the floor at that type of speed and playing that style, that good of defense. So that has got to be good news for Indiana as they move forward. Of course, they would have loved to have had him for the last month to get integrated with this team as they continue to grow together. But having him back is better than otherwise. And it could be there's another reason that it could be the difference for Indiana to make the tournament at the end of the year or not, because their margin for error is not going to be great this season. There are so many. You cannot be 9-11 in the league this year and make the NCAA tournament. And, it's going to be tough. Like you just talked about those 3 games coming up. Boom. That's about as tough a schedule as you're going to have, because those are the 3 best teams in the Big Ten right now. I think, without question. Obviously, 2 of them are obvious. Illinois is still good with or without Terrence Shannon. They're showing that they're a quality ball club. And speaking of Terrence Shannon, he files for a temporary restraining order for Illinois to immediately reinstate him to the team, which that was a little shocking to see. I'm not going to get into all the reasons. If you don't know, I'm sure you already do, but that is more than shocking to me for a number of reasons, because first of all, I don't know how you can force anybody to do anything, because they're not paying you. You don't have a contract with them to play and they're just, I don't know. That's a weird situation. And I think that he is pushing it, but hey, if you're innocent and you believe you're innocent, what else are you going to do? So innocent until proven guilty. And I'm not going to make the assumption that he is or is not guilty. I don't know. And won't pretend that I do, but I was just surprised by that, Mike. I don't know what can be gained by forcing a team to try to take you back.
There's lots to be gained. Without a doubt. I look, one of the things I'd say is I'm not an attorney. And so I don't know what the legal merits are of this case. Now, I mean the case that was brought yesterday, I think, not the one in Kansas. I don't know,
right.
But in regards to trying to get his position back, so to speak, I don't know what the case is based on. All we were told is that there's a case. And I don't know if anybody has seen the suit or what, because I haven't read an article that laid out I don't even know how the lawyers would speak that, but laid out, it wouldn't be charges, but the case that would be in favor of him getting his position back. I don't know what they're basing that on, but I understand why he would do that. As it stands, he's not playing. He's not continuing to enhance his NBA draft status. He's missing the opportunity to be an All-American, and look, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying why he would do this. I'm not saying that he is being that these are being unfairly taken away. I'm not making a judgment like that. I'm just saying this is what he's missing as a result of not being out there, and therefore why he would go to the lengths of filing a lawsuit to try to get back out there. That's what he has to gain. He has very little to lose other than attorney's fees, and we don't know whether or not that case is being, what kind of fees he has to pay, et cetera. So he has very little to lose in this because college eligibility is finite. And as each game goes by, that's one fewer game he doesn't play. And again, no judgment being made that that's an unfair circumstance. I don't know enough about his case, about the case against him. I just know what the charges are. So I'm not making a judgment in that regard. I'm just saying I understand why he would want to have the opportunity to compete. There is much for him to be gained if he's on the floor.
It's certainly an advantage for Illinois because they don't have to do anything to potentially get one of their best players back. If not their best player, they can kind of sit back and go, hey, we didn't do anything. We're just doing what we're told to do, because the trial for the case against him in Kansas, it would not be set to begin until June. So this entire season will be over.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, basically backing up everything that you just said, and it could be his last season. And probably would be, depending on how that turned out to be. But it's going to be interesting to see because he lists the Board of Regents. He's got everybody from Illinois on there. So claiming that he was not given due process, which is probably factual. But I don't know what all the rules are and all the laws, this, that, and the other thing, the ins and outs of what they can or cannot remove you for from. Maybe each university has something different. Maybe it's a state law that they can get behind. I don't know.
Every university has the ability to set their own standards relative to participation on a college athletic team. They all have their ability to do that. So that's why I say I don't understand what the nature of the case is, but I understand why he would do this. Because this is it. I mean, he's played 5 years. This is his 5th year, and he's played 11 games. So there's no red shirt available to him. Even if they're in this circumstance, there wouldn't be anyway because it's not a medical issue. So I mean, this is it. He either gets back on the floor for the Illini or he never plays college basketball again. So that's what he has to gain. I don't know whether he has a case. The attorney is willing to bring it, and I will see what happens with it. But obviously, it's going to happen fairly quickly. They would need to get some sort of injunction or stay or whatever that would allow him to see. I don't know all the legal terms, but they would need to get some sort of court order that would allow him to play in a reasonably soon, or it won't matter.
Absolutely. Mike, what's up next for you, sir?
What's next for me? I will have a bracket today on Fox Sports. I'm working on some stuff for next week. I've got a couple of different projects I'm working on, and I will be back Sunday at BTN for the first episode of 2023-24 Big Ten basketball and beyond. We didn't have it this weekend because we had football. We had a lot of football, so we did a big show on Sunday instead. And I said, why don't we just call it Big Ten basketball and beyond? And the beyond is football, right? That's beyond. But no, we went with the big show labeling on Sunday's program, so it makes sense.
There you go. I knew somebody was asking about it earlier. Andy was asking Big Ten basketball beyond coming back. There you go, Mike or Andy. Your Sunday night, your wish. Mike, cannot thank you enough as always, brother. Have a great rest of your week. We look forward to seeing you this weekend on the air.
Thanks, Jim.
We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and we'll be back with it. Brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore for Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Ooh, sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
This will be open here, and I'm like,
and then we'll have Chronic after this open segment.
So that's it. 9:50. I wish I had a 10-10er.
I'm working on it. I'll let you know if I hear back.
That would be good.
And feel free to take Chronic a little long if we don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do-do, do-do. 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 Do-do, do-do.
Excuse me.
Holy moly macaroni.
Don't forget to mention that tonight's game's on the Peacock.
Peacock.
I can't believe. I mean, actually, I don't want to say I can't believe it, but I'm annoyed myself that the Indiana Purdue game next week is on Peacock. But I know why they're doing it. So
exactly right.
All right, here we go.
812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, a little rainy. Better than snowing, I guess, but it's going to get cold. Gee whiz. I looked at the forecast, which I used to be so good at doing, but they've just stopped because I've just been so busy, it seems like all the time. But I happened to look ahead, and Saturday
Saturday, I thought it was next Monday that it was supposed to be really bad.
It starts Saturday. The high is 27, drops to 11. Sunday, the high is 20, drops to 7. Monday, the high, 12 whopping degrees. A low, -2. Below 0. That's crap.
Make sure your heaters are in check. Make sure your HVAC units are ready to roll. If you're going to be dealing with that kind of weather.
Dude, that's serious cold.
It is very similar to the type of weather we had around Christmas time last year.
Don't leave things in the car.
Yep.
Electrical equipment, stuff like that, computers, laptops. Tuesday, high of 11, the low 3. Wednesday, the high of 21, low of 14. Thursday, the high of 26, low of 13. Gee whiz. Friday, lows get down to the 90. Saturday, high of 21, low of 10. Sunday, we don't see above freezing for a week.
For nearly a week.
That's not my jam.
Welcome to the winter time, Mr. Coyle.
Yeah, winter weather is one thing. That's not winter weather. That's Arctic. That's crap. That's Arctic crap there, baby.
But here's the thing. There's at least, I guess it depends on where you live, but getting that at least for 1 to 2 weeks out of the winter season is fairly normal.
I'm not saying it's not normal. I just don't like it.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were saying that just doesn't happen.
Well, no, it happens. Well, obviously, it happens. It's happening. It's happening, baby. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. There's just, all you can do is stay inside and watch work or watch basketball in the evenings and things like that. So you got that going for you, which is nice. And speaking of which, tonight, Indiana taking on a Rutgers. And don't forget, after the game with Todd Leary, live from Hoosier Hanks East, over off of College Mall Road in Bloomington. Tonight's game is on Peacock, right? Is tonight's game on Peacock?
It is. It is on the cock, as what's his face would say. We could say that. You could say that. On the air.
I know.
Who says that? There's a guy on. It's Pat McAfee. He refers to it as the cock. And that'll be the last time I say it.
Yep. Tonight, 7 p.m. Just 7 p.m. For those of you who don't have the subscription, and if you live in the Bloomington area, you're welcome to join us out at Hoosier Hanks East, where we will be watching the game, because they do have that particular streaming service. And then, of course, afterwards, after the game with Todd Leary, as it's going to be an interesting ball game. Indiana, like I said, this is an opportunity that Indiana really needs to take advantage of. But a lot of other news as well. Trilly Donovan with a report that Indiana might have to wait a bit longer for a decision from Derek Queen. Is burnerball.com part of their full ride network? Derek Queen is expected to delay his decision again. It was originally expected that Queen would be making that known at the 2024 Spalding Hoops Hall Classic, which Montverde Academy will be playing in. It's, of course, down to Maryland and Indiana, to most everyone's knowledge. Connection for Queen to Maryland is his hometown, of course. And then you've got the Montverde pipeline to Indiana. Liam McNeely, his current teammate, his former teammate, Malik Renew, who is still on the squad, former teammate, Jalen Hood-Schifino, has been through Indiana already to the NBA. Indiana has done a good job showing why Derek Queen should come to Indiana with what has happened with its bigs, Trace Jackson Davis, making it successfully into the league, getting drafted by the right team, and then having Draymond Green be Draymond Green to provide him all the opportunity minutes that he could want, and he's taken advantage of those. And I'm talking about Trace Jackson Davis by playing extremely well and making them feel more confident about their decision in picking him up. But that also bodes well for Indiana. But that's the second time that decision has been delayed. So we'll see how that goes. There's no doubt Liam McNeely trying to recruit him to Indiana. And I expect Malik Renew to still be at Indiana next year. He's not going to be anywhere. So you could potentially have 3 Montverde Academy graduates on the same Indiana team. Potentially. If that decision ever gets made. We shall see. Some football news also for Indiana. The spring football roster has been released. One name you will not see on there that you have not heard about yet, Josh Henderson. He did not enter the portal, but he is also not on the Indiana spring roster, and that is because he is going to declare for the NFL draft. You heard it here first. But that would have been a nice piece for Indiana to have back. But ironically, Josh came to Indiana from North Carolina, transferred in, and they pick up a running back from North Carolina. His last name is Green, I believe, but I cannot think of what the first name was. In addition to that, more staffer information for Indiana football under Kurt Cignetti. He continues to add roles to his coaching staff, a couple new members to that. Matt Wilson will be a quote-unquote general manager type role. And Blake Jackson is joining as director of football operations. You've got the DBOP, director of basketball operation, and the DFOP. DBOP, DFOP. What kind of, that's a weird deal. But anyway, Matt Wilson has had stops across numerous Power 5 programs, including Indiana back in 2019, where the run, Indiana's run started. He helped in recruiting and personnel-related roles then. He was involved with the recruitment of Michael Penix Jr. He had other stints at Tennessee, Mississippi State, North Carolina State, Memphis, Arkansas State, and UConn, all in similar personnel-related roles. And then a stint with the Arizona Cardinals. Like I said, Wilson was part of the group that was extremely involved with the recruitment of Michael Penix Jr. He was part of the staff that included Kalen DeBoer as the coordinator back then, obviously. When at the Arkansas State, he was a member of, put together the top recruiting class in their program's history in 2022. And then North Carolina State this past season. He is highly regarded amongst the football coaching industry. Blake Jackson recently served as DFOP at Arkansas State. Before there, he spent numerous years on staffs at Tennessee, working in operations and as a grad assistant. Both of those gentlemen spent time together on the Volunteers staff. Both are expected to be big-time additions under Kurt Cignetti. And it continues to roll. We're talking about Indiana football in January. So there's that. But the spring roster was released, like I said. You can go check that out online, as I'm sure there will be some additions. Now, do they include, with the spring roster, will probably, I don't have it pulled up, but would not include guys like Alberto Mendoza, because he will not be here yet. He's not going to be an early enrollee, but I believe Tyler Cherry is going to be. I think that's going to give him a big leg up. I was trying to decide who can usurp Taven Jackson at the number 2 spot. I'm at this moment, I'm conceding the number 1 quarterback, QB1 for Indiana, is going to be Curtis Rourke. Experienced, no doubt. Thrown for thousands of yards. So he's QB1. But everyone just assumes that Taven Jackson is going to get that number 2 spot. Well, it would make sense. You know, this would be his 3rd season in college football, which I believe makes him the oldest in that room besides.
Yeah, he'll be the 2nd oldest after Rourke, and then Brock Lowry just below him, and then the freshman after that.
But with Tyler Cherry coming here as being an early enrollee, I think that there's going to be a race between Cherry and Taven Jackson for that number 2 spot, which is what you want. You have to have guys that push the other guys. Now, Curtis Rourke probably doesn't need pushing. He's shown that he's a veteran, that the guy's getting married, for gosh sakes. He's mature. That's another thing that is a very, very positive thing for Indiana. You have a mature quarterback, a guy that is used to already making big-time decisions. It's going to be so interesting to see what Indiana could do next year, because in the last few years, they have done so well in the portal. under Tom Allen, they did great. They were able to hit that portal and bring guys in from every major program around, whether it's UCLA or Auburn or Ole Miss or North Carolina. They were bringing guys in from everywhere. Good players. And not that they can't continue to do that, but what we have seen with this first iteration of Curt Cignetti's team is he has not strayed from what he knows best. And that is finding talent. I think it's time to take a break. Finding talent that others don't see and developing that talent, amongst other things. But we'll talk about that and a lot more. Chronic Hoosier joins us next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Back with that and much more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly.
Good morning, Chronic.
Good morning. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good, brother. How are you doing?
Oh, it's a lovely day for a duck.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
It is miserable out there.
Well, we were talking earlier, just wait till a week from now.
Oh, I know. I'll tell you what, I'd much rather deal with some snow than this just cold drizzle. It's just
I agree
balmy.
with you. I'm with you on that one.
At least you can do donuts in the snow and sled and not have
It's
to.
cool. Not have to go
well,
to school.
hell, you're still going to school. You're just not going to the building.
Oh, I didn't have to go to school back then, baby. It was glorious. And we did not have to make those days up either. Those were the good old days.
Yes, they were.
Miss a couple weeks. No
A
biggie.
lot of times now, even you really don't have to make up with them now, depending on what.
That's
school
because they
system
can do
you're
them
in.
all on their damn computers at home.
Yeah,
Thank God I
yep.
did not grow up in that era.
Yeah,
what
they
I
stopped
know.
building in those snow days into the calendar where, they'd bake in like 3 or 4 cancellations so that they wouldn't have to run late.
They don't even
And
have to.
They're done with that now. Yeah, no, the calendar is fixed and rigid. If you miss one day of class instruction, you have to add 1 day to the end of the school year. So they just do it online.
I barely
Oh.
missed that era by, I guess, maybe 3 years of the online stuff.
Well, the worst part, because I know a bunch of teachers, they still have their snow days. They'll assign videos and tests and checkpoints where they can digitally track to make sure that the kids are showing up. But most of the teachers are drinking wine or out playing in the weather.
All right, how much time we got? Oh, still got about 60 seconds till we're back.
Oh, man. What's new with you, brother?
Not a thing, man. Not a thing. Just batching it here for a couple of days. Got the wife out of town for work, so just watching a lot of sports with the kids right now.
Plenty of that to do.
Come home and my daughter's got the whole house lit up in yellow and blue, and I about had to kick her out of the family.
Yelling. Oh, my God.
Her mom's from Michigan, so it went to Western, not University of Michigan, but she's from the state of Michigan. And we've got some family that are alums there, and she's been to Ann Arbor a couple of times and just thinks it's the coolest.
All right, here we go, guys.
Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. It's January 9th. A wet one out there, but that's okay. What are you going to do about it? Chronic Hoosier with us now, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Jim. Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you. I was just talking. We were talking Indiana football a minute ago, and I'm just still shocked every time. I'm like, dude, it's January and we're talking Indiana football, and it's actual conversations to have, good ones. Just talking about the spring roster was released, and you probably heard Indiana had been really successful in the last couple of years in the portal, getting great players in. Curt Cignetti has gone kind of a different route. He's brought a ton of guys in, but virtually all of them from what you would call mid-majors, and just fits in with what he has been doing, which is not, so it's not a surprise. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do with that next year, though. But the just the sheer excitement by Indiana fans on football is kind of wild to see. Of course, everybody is in a honeymoon phase until you're not. So we'll see.
Yeah,
And there he goes.
We scared him off.
Right out. Kicked him right off. No, he'll rejoin us here in a second. But yeah, it's and the other night, I think I mentioned it. Yeah, I mentioned this yesterday when they put the camera on Curt Cignetti. Chronic rejoins us there. Got you back there, sir. Go right ahead.
Oh, the world's sketchiest internet continues its undefeated streak. No, I was just saying it's always exciting time when you've got a coaching change, just the promise of something new and different from whatever your woes were before. I think it's been particularly refreshing from my seat, at least, to see in a very short period of time what appears to be a very deliberate plan, very well executed, in as much as assessing critical flaws, weaknesses, and going out and addressing those in short order. I'm really less concerned about where the kids are coming from, what their star rankings were, where they played for last, versus how this staff believes they're going to fit in the system and be able to execute their vision. And it certainly looks like they've got pretty decent haul of talent coming in, particularly at the skill positions. You've got just a wicked sharp wide receiver room. Quarterback room just got real deep and real competitive in virtually no time flat. And most importantly, there's been some positive developments on the line. And that's always going to be the critical link, I think, in any football team, but particularly when you're talking about playing Big Ten football next year. You got to have a line that can protect that talent in the backfield and give them time to get the ball aired out. So I'm fascinated to see how it all shakes out. It's a whole lot easier at this phase to sell your vision, your dreams, than it is to have to defend the tape that you've put out there. So I think year one is always super critical in showing how those visions and dreams can materialize into tangible wins and things that future classes of recruits can buy into and see themselves playing for. But it's a historic offseason. It's going to be the first time in history that Indiana football gets a chance to face off against both of the national finalists in the subsequent season. So we get to see both Michigan and Washington on the schedule next year. So looking forward to that just as much as we're looking forward to a boatload of home games. So should be fun all around. Let's hope they can make some hay while the sun is bright and shiny.
One person that has not been mentioned as a great keep, of course, getting Donovan McCauley back, getting some of the offensive linemen back was huge. No question about that. But James Evans, the punter, he's coming back, and man, he was a difference maker for Indiana last year. He was the most consistent member of the team on any side of the ball, any room, anything. That dude was just booming kicks all year long, and that could be a gigantic weapon for this team next year. Not so much for last year's team, but if this team can find success, having a punter like that he's an NFL style. I think he is an NFL worthy punter from what I've seen over the last, especially last season. He was just consistently big.
No doubt. And, it's special teams, one of those areas that tends to get overlooked quite a lot. But how often do you see games decided by special teams play? I mean, There's a reason they call it, the three facets to the game, and the offense, the defense, and the special teams. And the ability to reverse fields is absolutely huge. So big pickup for Indiana. Hopefully they can put them on ice a little bit more next season and not have to rely on the services. But I think it's a testament to what the staff has been able to do in this day and age. Keeping your own guys, or at least the guys that you want, is every bit as important as picking up guys in the portal or flipping recruits and whatnot. And I think it's one of the earliest barometers of what type of culture, what type of locker room you can expect. So, you love to see these guys who are looking for greener pastures after they get a chance to sit down with the new staff, especially guys like Evans, who certainly had some quarters, some people that would be interested in his play for them. Choose to stick with the horse that you know. And you saw that again with McCauley and a lot of the other guys that decided to stay. I think those are just early returns that certainly should make Indiana fans happy.
Without question. And you mentioned the rooms that have gotten so intensely competitive. None more so than the quarterback's room, as you also mentioned. But the fact that you have a quarterback that is a veteran, he's This dude's getting married, Chronic. He's got bigger fish to fry. He's not going to get rattled. I don't think he's going to get rattled by a lot, to be honest with you. He's getting married. He's used to making big decisions already. He's mature. I don't think that Curt Cignetti could have done anything better than what he did by bringing Curtis Rhodes in ahead of all these other young quarterbacks that he has. And that includes Taven Jackson, although he'll be in his third season. He's still what I would consider a young, inexperienced quarterback. After that, I know a lot of people think that Taven Jackson's going to be the clear number 2. I don't know that. Tyler Cherry can possibly come in and is definitely going to challenge for that spot. But the sheer fact that you have that depth at that spot is something Indiana has not seen since I'm going to go to 2013, a decade ago.
No, it's remarkable to see the depth and how quickly it was amassed. Now, talent is certainly going to be a critical component to that depth. But, assuming Taven Jackson continues to develop, the very fact that he chose to stay when they recruited basically above and below him in the classes, you got to love the competitiveness that signals, not walking away from a challenge, not sticking around simply because you've been promised something. This very much looks like a situation where everybody's coming in with their eyes wide open, fully expecting you're going to have to earn that time and compete for it. And, hopefully we'll have a little more clarity this summer as far as what direction that competition's heading than, some of the cloak and dagger, hide the ball stuff that we dealt with last year. But, at the end of the day, more power to everybody that chooses to stick around and chooses to fight for minutes. And I'm equally impressed by the fact that they layered that depth as far across the classes as well, so that you have continuity as guys matriculate through the program. If it's always a challenge now to keep them, either the guys that aren't getting the time they feel like they deserve, that are unhappy, or those who, maybe overachieved for what the expectations were. And now they've got other schools, bigger schools, calling with maybe better NIL packages. That's always going to be a struggle. But, the biggest step is often the first step, and getting that room filled with guys that are talented, guys that bring some experience, and guys that bring some promise. I think those are all advantageous. We'll see what spring ball looks like, what camp shakes out, and hopefully you end up having not just the most competitive guy under center to start the season, but you've also got the talent in place behind them, so that if anything does happen, you've got a true next man up scenario where you don't have too big of a step back, which has long been a big problem for Indiana. We saw what happened with IU's effectiveness when Penix went out. And, you cannot be a one-trick pony if you want to compete in the upper echelon in the Big Ten. Not then, and especially not now, as it continues to grow and expand and become even more powerful.
Yeah, and I was looking over the roster, and I'm going to assume anyone that has that's on the roster currently that played at a previous school is on scholarship. I know that assuming is always dangerous to do, but so just going under that assumption, looking over the roster, that means 52 of the guys on this roster are transfers. There are only 85 scholarship players on a program. You usually have 120-ish total players, which Indiana, I think I counted 118 on this roster total, but 52 transfers. If those are all scholarship guys, that's 52 out of 85.
No, it's huge, and I've seen a lot of comments kind of bemoaning the turnover. At first the exodus, and then the perception of what we're adding. You start adding guys from some of the MAC schools or from JMU or from wherever, and just trying to pigeonhole those as less competitive. And my response has been throughout, let's be honest here. We've basically been a MAC team here for the last 3 years as far as our ability to compete week in, week out in the Big Ten Conference. You're probably better off getting some MAC All-Stars than some MAC also-rans or some backbenchers. But more importantly than all that, give me guys that want to be here. And that's one of the things that I think people struggle with the most with the portal. We've seen it quite a bit in basketball, and so I think it's a lot easier to diagnose just because it's such a smaller sample set. But when you have guys that aren't fully committed to the program, to the coaching staff and their plans and their vision for the team, you're just never going to achieve the synergy necessary to win at the highest potential. And getting guys that are bought in, getting guys that want to be here for whatever reasons, and everybody's got different reasons for why they pick their schools and everything else. But they've got to be bought in, and they've got to be bought in from the ground floor. So I'm going to assume that the staff they've assembled, the roster they've built so far, is comprised of just that. Guys that want to be at Indiana, guys that want to compete for Indiana, and guys that want to write a new chapter of Indiana football under Coach Sig. And you watch him at the basketball game, you see his speeches, you see his tweets. It's easy to see just how charismatic he is and the impact. And you look at the game last night, and I'm going to save some of my personal opinions about the Harbaughs and the whole Michigan football situation. But at the end of the day is Jim Harbaugh's a hell of a ball coach. His dad's a hell of a ball coach. His brother's a hell of a ball coach. And, you love to see your team being led by a ball coach, a guy that can inspire young men and get them to play for each other and to play to the best of their abilities. And that's really often the difference in games when there's so much talent on the field and there's so much parity in the leagues. Give me the guys that want it the most. Give me the guys that are bought in for their brothers, and I'll ride with those guys any day. And it certainly seems like Coach Sig's putting together just that type of a squad right now. So we'll see if that bears out come this fall. But you got to give this staff credit for really doing a remarkable job considering what product they were selling to get what they've got on hand right now, and even more so, get these guys on campus now. Of all those guys that you just rattled off on the scholarships, the vast majority of them are in Bloomington now, working together in the locker room, in the strength room, or the weight room rather, building those bonds, going over the playbook, developing that chemistry that hopefully is going to produce some wins next year. So kudos to all of them.
Yeah, and it was fun to watch Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix Jr. play for a national championship last night. Everyone was, I'm sure virtually every Indiana fan, a lot of other people as well did not want Michigan to win for obvious reasons. Same thing. I'm not going to go into all that stuff either. But Michigan won. They were the better team. They were just badass. They were just good. And it is what it is. Going to be an exciting time next year, man. Indiana gets to play the defending national champion, runner-up. Ohio State go to the Rose Bowl playing UCLA, and you're not going into that season with like woe is me expectations, fans will be going into that season with excitement and some unknowing excitement of what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, and you've got 8 home games next season, which is just absurd in this day and age. And they're front loaded.
Could not have come at a better time for Indiana to make the change, not to interrupt you, for Curt Cignetti. I mean, that's perfect for him.
No, that's absolutely. And it's perfect for the entire athletic department, quite frankly, because as we've long talked about, that's where the department's true untapped potential is from a revenue standpoint. Just getting the seats filled, selling the tickets, getting people out of the lot and into Memorial Stadium. But you've been around here enough, and you've seen even during good seasons how that kind of falls off as the weather starts to turn on us. Come late October, November. So to have 6 of your 8 home games before the calendar even turns to November, really letting Bloomington show out, I think is huge. And you've got a bunch of winnable games. I'm not going to go off and say Indiana's going to be in the CFP next year, but they certainly have a schedule that's going to give them some downhill momentum, especially from the start. Get some wins under their belt. Like you said, get a chance to go out to Pasadena and finally go play in the Rose Bowl for the first time in a hot minute, over a half a century, and hopefully stack some W's before you kind of get into the teeth of it with the Washingtons, the Michigans, the Ohio States, and whatnot. And then you get to cap it all off with a bucket game back in Bloomington. So I think it sets up about as idyllically as you could have hoped for a new staff to walk into. And quite frankly, now that we're past the divisions, just what a treat it is, not necessarily to see Penn State mixed in there with the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. You're subbing to Washington, don't get me wrong, but to get to do a little bit of Nebraska and Northwestern, sign me up for that.
Indiana basketball tonight at Piscataway, New Jersey, to take on a Rutgers team they have lost 8 out of their last 10 games to. They have not won there since 2018, and this is a game, Chronic, that I say that Indiana needs to win, because it's an opportunity that is not going to come around a lot this year, and that is playing a road game where you probably have as good a chance as any other to win. This is not going to be going to Purdue. This is not going to be the same as going to Illinois or going to Wisconsin or even Iowa for that matter. This is a game that Indiana could actually win and needs to win if they want to make the NCAA tournament.
Well, you've got one win under your belt with the Ohio State win last Saturday. You've got a little bit of distance from that debacle out in Lincoln, but I think this is a great chance for the team to assert themselves. You're currently sitting still in a tie for second place in the Big Ten. I think it's imperative that they keep contact with the top of the conference, and I think it's imperative that they show themselves that they're capable of going on the road in a hostile environment and snatching a dub. Quite honestly, because the fight that we saw against Nebraska, the focus was just so far from what the situation required. It certainly seemed like they were able to refocus against Ohio State in spite of some just woeful rebounding, which is a great metrics for aggression. Show me that you can focus that aggression. Show me that you can sustain it, that you can overcome some of the adversity that is going to come in the Big Ten. It's just going to happen on the road. You're going to get some BS calls. You're going to be put in some tough situations. Show me that you can weather that and get through. Because I think as you get past this week, with you got Minnesota on Friday, and then you've got Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. That's going to be a tough stretch for Indiana. It's going to be a really tough stretch. So to get wins wherever you can find them right now, if you can stack up a win tonight, now you're on a streak. You've got Minnesota this weekend at home with the students back. Now you got a 3-game streak, and you got the Boilers in town for a whiteout. They got to get some momentum. They got to get some consistency if they want to have a shot at hearing their name called on Selection Sunday. Because as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, the league's just not this good this year. A mid-level showing in the Big Ten probably ain't going to be good enough. The strength of schedule is just not there, and with Indiana's lack of a marquee win in the non-conference portion, road games are going to be everything. So whenever you get the opportunity against a team like Rutgers, middle of the pack, if there's even a glimmer of chance of success, you've got to find a way to seize it. And this is just one of those where the opportunities are going to be far and few between to get the road wins in the Big Ten this year. And this is certainly probably the most winnable, short of maybe the Penn State game, at least according to Pomeroy. So you get them while you can, start stacking them up, and start growing. Xavier looked like a markedly different player against Ohio State than what we saw against Nebraska.
Oh my gosh!
Show me that he can continue that arc. That he can, default to that guy as opposed to the guy that we've seen, previously. He wasn't particularly effective or as effective as he should have been to start the season. Pretty extended period out. So it was a welcome sight to see him really honed in and focused and leading the charge against Ohio State, quite frankly. I thought he brought a dynamicism that Indiana's been woefully lacking in the backcourt. Build on that, take that on the road, lead these guys, get that dub. And like I said, let's start stacking some wins because we're a week away today from number one ranked Boilermakers coming to the hole. And I think this team could certainly use some additional confidence and some good tape to look at as they run up into that brutal schedule here to close the month.
Absolutely, because we've talked about the possibility of going 0-3 against a stretch that includes Purdue, Wisconsin, and Illinois. If you could get one win out of those three, you're going to be extraordinarily happy, especially if you can add a win tonight to that. That will put Indiana ahead of the curve and in a season where their margin for error is not that great. So that this could be I know it's good. People sound like it. Oh, it's not. I'm not saying this is a must win, but it's just one of those things that makes the difference in a season. It's the difference between throwing a pick and a touchdown. It's a key moment in a game where things turn, and this is a key moment in a season where Indiana could really make a move that gives them just a little bit of breathing room.
No doubt. And I think you're 100% on. We've said it before. There is no margin for error left for this team right now. The strength of schedule is just not that good. The marquee wins just aren't there. So anytime you get an opportunity, whether against a Rutgers on the road or Purdue at home, the selection committee is going to look at those pretty similarly, quite frankly. And with trips to Wisconsin, to Illinois, immediately following Purdue. That's a tough order for Indiana, and I don't think they're incapable of beating those teams. I don't think Purdue is a lock for the national championship. No different than I don't think Illinois is a lock for number 2 in the conference. I think every team in the league certainly has its flaws this year. Purdue probably has the fewest, but those teams are beatable. I think Indiana has the talent to do it. They've just got to get that talent on the same page. And they've got to get, you got to see the ball go in the hole, and they got to figure out a way to limit some of the 3-point scoring that's really submarined them quite frequently over the last several years. So, great chance to shore that up and get it done now. I've said this for the last decade plus, but you go back and you look at the run that the Cody Zeller Hoosiers and the Victor Oladipo, that whole squad went on. I don't think any of that's possible without that win on the road against North Carolina State. What was that, 2010, I guess? No, 2011. First road test of the season, and went out and fought against a pretty, scrappy but still mid-level team. But never underestimate the value of a road win, especially in conference, for what it can do for a team's confidence and its cohesiveness going forward. So great opportunity here in early January to get one of those under their belt and pick up some momentum going into the teeth of the schedule.
Chronic Hoosier joining us, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. We appreciate you, brother, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks as always, Jim. We'll catch you next week.
You betcha. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with that and more right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
There's some news about Jim Jim Irsay. I don't know if you want to dive into that at all during this last segment.
Yeah, what happened?
Let me pull it up. I don't want to butcher what happened. Jim Irsay is currently being treated for a severe respiratory illness. While this unfortunately means he won't be able to perform with his band this week in Los Angeles, he is receiving excellent care and looks forward to returning to the stage as soon as possible. We'll have no additional information at this time, and we ask you respect the privacy of Jim and his family as he recovers.
Did you say expect to return to the stage as soon as possible?
Remember, didn't he? I don't know what kind of band he plays in, but
I know that. But I'm like, I didn't know that he was like.
It's funny that that's what it's about, isn't it? They didn't even. It's like
it's not like the return to the managing the Colts or something. That's what I was thinking. Not return to who is he? Aerosmith? All of a sudden,
what's his name? Almost called him someone that he's not. Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler, yeah.
John Mellencamp? I mean, that's odd. I mean, it's just an odd way of
wording it.
Yeah.
I want to so badly do a Jim Irsay impression right now, but it feels inappropriate.
Man, I'm just so disappointed, man, that we're not going to be able to perform in Los Angeles, man. I was really looking forward to it, but I've got this respiratory thing, man, and they say just chill out, relax, Jim. And we'll get you back on stage soon, man. How's that?
It was what I was thinking of, but you did it for me, I guess.
Yeah, that's not inappropriate.
He's not dead, so I guess it is fine.
Well, no, it's
like Terry Minor's like once
dude, if they're talking about him returning to stage being the issue, it's not that damn bad. I'm like, what?
When Joby Hall passed away, Terry quit doing the Joby Hall impressions. For obvious reasons.
I hate that because, there was when I was in school, listen to Bob and Tom. Part of the Wild Food Group is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. It's January 9th, and a little bit of Colts news. I don't really know to call it Colts news or not, but Jim Irsay, it's been reported, is currently being treated for severe respiratory illness. While this unfortunately means he won't be able to perform with his band this week in Los Angeles, he is receiving excellent care and looks forward to returning to the stage as soon as possible. We'll have no additional information at this time and ask that you respect the privacy of Jim and his family as he recovers. That came from the Colts. Odd. For me, that the response is that he looks forward to returning to his band. What about to the team? I mean, wouldn't that be the first thing you would mention?
I mean, I guess it is technically the off season now for the Colts. So, I mean, maybe that's not.
Well, yeah, but it's just, that just seems, that's like saying.
It is a very weird way to word it when that's not your primary profession.
That's like saying, Jim's in the hospital dealing with a severe respiratory illness, but he looks forward to getting back on the golf course as soon as possible.
That's pretty good comparison.
Well, and I'm terrible at golf, but it's just, it has nothing to do with, it's like burying the lead. Odd. Oh, well, but we wish him well. Hope that that's not a serious issue and to get past that. Is the Colts. Yeah, they're done for the year. Their season is over. Unfortunately, they will have the 15th pick? Yeah. Colts get the 15th pick in the 2024 draft. Chicago, number 1 from the Panthers. So what does Chicago do? That's the big thought. Because they have a quarterback, but do they love their quarterback? But man, who's going to be that number 1 pick? There's not a quarterback. Is there a quarterback that's deserving of number 1 coming out?
There hasn't been as much talk about the quarterbacks and their NFL potential this year as I feel like we normally hear.
Your Heisman Trophy winner is
Jaden Daniels. Is he an underclassman? Yeah. Can he even go to the NFL yet?
I think he's a junior at least. But regardless,
then he can go. Yeah,
I'm not. I didn't watch him enough to know, although his stats are stupendous. If he's where he is on the mock. If he's on the mock drafts, I know that guys like Michael Penix is down the line. I think he's like the 5th quarterback on Mel Kiper's deal. But quarterbacks get kind of sprinkled through there. They don't go like 1, 2, 3 like you would think. It depends on what the team needs and like Chicago. What are they going to do? Or if they're sticking with their quarterback, what is their biggest need? Is it a left side tackle to protect that quarterback? Is it a game-changing wide receiver for that quarterback to throw to? Just depends on what the needs are. But Indianapolis, with the 15th pick, not a bad spot. They've got their quarterback. They've got a running back. If they can get Michael Pittman Jr. back and probably going to shore up the defense, maybe, but we'll see. We shall certainly see. Tonight, Indiana on Peacock, on the Peacock, followed by Purdue. They're both on Peacock.
They both, yeah. It's a Peacock doubleheader for the Big Ten tonight.
Oh boy, almost said it.
Almost said what I said earlier, which we will refrain from. Too close.
Yeah, too close to
towing the line.
Too close to do it. But ironically, Indiana's game on Peacock tonight, Purdue's game on Peacock tonight. Next week, Indiana and Purdue, or Purdue at Indiana on Peacock. So for those of you that I know, hey, look, I know it sucks having to get different stream services. I have to do the same thing, and I don't know why people think that it's not any different for me. I'm not rich. I don't want to spend money I don't have to spend.
And I mean, I guess I don't want to condone this, but there are plenty of ways to legally stream the game. I'm not endorsing it, but
I know nothing. I know nothing about that.
All I'm doing is mentioning that there's a way to do it. I'm not explaining how to do it or saying that I do it myself.
One thing you could do is go to Hoosier Hanks East tonight, over off of College Mall Road, if you're in the Bloomington area, and watch the game, hang out. You know what? Well, I'm going to take some stuff, some merch.
There you go.
Whoever joins us, get some merch tonight. And I'll make sure y'all get some Hanks merch. So, because don't have to rush around. It's an away game. I hate the home game rushing, all that stuff. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to not having to rush. But this is an important game for Indiana because, like I said, it's a game that they can win. They can show that they have grown a little bit, that Xavier makes that difference, and he does make that difference, whether people want to realize that or not. Because as much as people love Gabe Cupps, and I'm not a Gabe Cupps hater, I'm not hating on Gabe Cupps, but let me tell you, Gabe Cupps is not
he's not ready to be in that role.
Not
that
only
he's
is he
been
not
thrust
ready,
into.
not ready now. I don't know how ready he's going to be next year because.
Oh, Indiana! I know we got to wrap up. Indiana definitely next year when Xavier Johnson is gone.
They have to get
they need
another
to find
point
a
guard.
veteran point guard in the portal.
Yep.
Because Gabe Cupps will only be a sophomore, and this will be a bridge year for him to kind of finally maybe get his hold on being the point, and maybe the following season he could step into that starting role. Potentially.
Yeah, if Gabe Cupps is your starting point guard next year, you're in trouble. I'm not going to lie to you. It's my opinion. But hey, we've got lots more to get to. Don't forget tonight after the game with Todd Leary, we'll be coming to you from Hoosier Hanks East. All of that will be out. And where you can find that. But you know where to join us, where to find us. Looking forward to that. Big thank you to Mike DeCourcy, of course, from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Don't forget that Big Ten and Beyond returns this Sunday with Mike and his group. Big thanks to Chronic Hoosier, as always. John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines and other things. And most importantly, each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. We're grateful for you. Grateful for the opportunity, I promise you. And greatly appreciate all of you. Until tonight, after the game, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.